You live from Waikanae in New Zealand. Hope you're having a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Porchlight Letters podcast number 2362. Our question today is one of my favorite questions is why do some families remember events differently? Memory reflects experience, not just facts. Hang on, I just got to type a question in here. Oh, that was 2008. Interesting. Okay. I needed that 2008 information really quick. So we'll find out in a moment. Okay. So when you think about why do some families remember events differently? Everybody, memory reflects experience, not just the facts. What was their experience during that event? Everybody will have a different perspective because perspective shapes memory. You'll be looking at things like how their age and their role of the age and the role influence of the recall. You'll be looking at any trauma that alters how events are remembered. Some people remember with vivid clarity, some don't remember it at all. The brain has decided to protect the body, so it shuts it down. Family dynamics affect storytelling. Are you in a close family where you can kid and joke and carry on and all that and have fun times when telling stories? Or are you one of those families that are a little more just, we enjoy telling the stories, but we tend not to get very emotional about it? There could be those too. And then multiple truths can coexist because people remember things differently. And it's based on what were they feeling at the time. So think about that. If you're going through an event, an experience, going to a wedding, everybody's happy. Most people are happy. Some people may not like the groom. Some people may not like the bride. But we're here to support the person we do like because this is their choice and we have to accept it. Some people will not accept that and they will pick out everything of the day like, oh, the flowers were, did you see that her flowers were half dead that she was carrying? Who on earth was her florist? We're not using that florist. Did you notice that her dress came down to this point here and did this and da-da-da-da? They will find, trust me, I have been at weddings where somebody doesn't like either the bride or the groom, and they nitpick everything about that person's spouse that they don't like. They will find things. Yet other people will remember that day as very happy, full of love, lots of laughter, great dancing. It was a great party, great ceremony. Other people, and because they're in that frame of mind, like, we are here to support this couple. It's great. They've fallen in love. This is their love. This is all part of their love story. So let's get in there and help them celebrate. We're here to celebrate love. And some people do go a little over the top on it. And then you get those that are at the other end that nitpick everything. And then you get those in the middle who are just there for a good time. So you can all go. So think about the last wedding that you went to. What was some of the feedback that you got from the wedding? From people who attended? When you say, oh, what did you think of the wedding? What do people say? Oh, it's lovely that they've found their part. Some people will be brutally honest, some won't. But when you go and tell the story afterwards of you attending the wedding, your perspective is going to be very different to somebody else. You may have been sitting over at that side of the venue, and they may have been at this side. They got to see a different angle that you did not. There is a really cool movie. It came out in 2008. It's called Vantage Point. If you have not seen it, I will tell you this. The way that it is done is absolutely brilliant. They have in the movie, a political figure is targeted in an assassination. They show the event over and over and over again from different people's perspective. What did they see? Where were they standing? What angle were they looking at? Because first of all, they're trying to figure out where the shot came from. So they have to get different people's perspective. Well, it kind of came from over there, I think, where they heard the sound come from. Or some heard the sound over there. Some saw a little flicker of a curtain up in a window. And they played these scenes over and over. And if you're not into movies that replay scenes a lot, this will not be a movie for you because they do this a lot. So they're showing the same event from different people's vantage points. Where were they standing when the shot happened? What did they see? And each time they retell the story, they add in new information, gets added in from the next witness that they talk to. And so they're basically they reverse engineer. Here's the person that got shot. This is where they're laying. This is the angle of the trajectory of the bullet that came down. So it probably came from somewhere up over there. And they reverse engineer everything. They get the witnesses to tell their perspective, their stories, their perspective. There was even one guy who was videotaping, so they got hold of his videotape and they look at his videotape. And every time they reconstruct everything, they add something in that was new information from a different person. And I will tell you this, it is really, really cool. It has some good twists in this movie, but it shows you how people at an event, all at the same event, just at different angles to whatever's happening up on stage, they see things very differently. You could have somebody go to a concert. See, my cousin this past weekend went and saw Ed Sheeran in Auckland in concert. Absolutely loved the concert. There are people there who probably hated it. There are people that said like, oh, it didn't go long enough, or it was too long, or they had a good time, or they didn't really have a good time because there was too many people there, or we got crushed afterwards. And so everybody experienced the same music, but they felt it in different ways. Oh, I really wish he'd done this song and not that one. And because I really don't like that one, but I really love this one and he didn't do that one. There's going to be comments like that going around. So think about when you go to an event, a funeral, a wedding, a baptism, family events, family Christmas, family Thanksgiving for those in the US and Canada. Think of those times when you're together at family events. What's everybody's recollection about what went on that day? Think about that. And that is a good time to go in there and that way you get different people's perspective, because you got taken into effect, you've got age. Young children are going to have a different perspective from the grandparents and from the parents and the aunts and uncles. So you're probably going to have you may have 3, 4, 5 generations at this event. Everybody's going to experience it differently because they're at a different age and have a different concept of understanding. They all have different emotions they all react differently to the thing. This is why stories matter. So the more information you can get on an event from different people, the better the story becomes, because now you've not just got one person's perspective, you have incorporated several people's perspective. And this matters because conflicting memories often reveal deeper understanding, not deception. It's just a deeper understanding of what happened. What's another good movie? Vantage Point demonstrates this so well. But think of Four Weddings and a Funeral. If you've ever seen that with Hugh Grant in it, Four Weddings and a Funeral, one of my favorite movies that I love to watch. But there's 4 different weddings that they go to, and there's a funeral. Everybody has a different perspective of the weddings. If you hear them talking afterwards, they were sitting together, they all saw the same thing, but from a slightly different angle because of how they were sitting. But think about the perspectives. Did they like the wedding? Did they not like the wedding? So, and you hear them talking about it, and they hear them talking about it afterwards, about the weddings and things like that. So what were their different perspectives? Everybody has a perspective of an event, and they see it differently than somebody else. You may go in and see the same movie as, Brad and I would go see the same movie. We had different points of view of that movie. One of us may have liked it. One of us really loved it. One liked, one loved. We picked up different pieces in the movie that we liked. Oh, I really liked it when they did this. He said, oh, I don't remember that. And I go, what was your favorite bit? And he would tell me his favorite bit. And I go, well, I don't remember that. So again, different perspectives. We both saw the same movie at the same time. And this is, perfect example. I don't know how many times we have watched Legally Blonde. And some of you have heard this story before. But Brad absolutely loved Legally Blonde. This movie, and I don't know how many times we have seen it. It's oodles of times, oodles. And he was channel surfing one day, and whenever he saw Legally Blonde on, he would go to that channel and watch it. It didn't matter if it was 5 minutes from the beginning, 10 minutes from the end, somewhere in the middle. It didn't matter. He would watch it right through to the end, even if it was only 2 minutes left. If it was the last bit where they're throwing up the caps at graduation or whatever, right there at the last 2 minutes, he would watch it. And one day he's sitting there, and all of a sudden he goes, that's where we got married. I'm like, what are you talking about? So he winds it back shows the scene where Warner and Al are sitting in the restaurant. They're sitting at the table in this restaurant. And I go, that table's on the spot where we got married. They were in El Cielo restaurant in Beverly Hills, where they shot that scene. This restaurant is absolutely adorable, gorgeous. Loved this place. The moment we walked in this place to see it as a possible wedding venue, we were hooked. The moment we had just stepped into the courtyard, we haven't even gotten into the building yet. And the building was this old Victorian house. And they had this out the side there, they had this cobblestone area that had a roof that could be retracted. It was absolutely gorgeous, absolutely stunning. The vibe was amazing. Both Brad and I felt at home when we walked in the door and knew that this was the place. And but we had some people who didn't like the venue, that thought it was a great wedding and we had a lot of fun and everything else, but weren't too fussed on the food that was served. But the food was awesome and amazing. The wedding cake was incredible. We got married in 98, so this year will be our 28th wedding anniversary. I can still taste that cake in my mouth. Every time I think of that cake, it was a beautiful chocolate cake that had raspberry preserve around the outside and then was encased in a white chocolate icing. It was perfection. Even a year later, when we got the top tier out of the freezer and defrosted it, and everywhere we went and people we visited, we took the cake with us. So they got to have some of it. They got to have some of that cake again. That cake was still a perfection a year later after being frozen and defrosted. But people have different perspectives of that wedding. Some people remembered some events. Some people remembered other events. It depends on where you are emotionally as to whether or not how you're going to remember the event. Not whether or not you remember the event, but how you will remember the event. You also have to take into account that that some people may not have as much of a memory recall. They may be maybe at the beginning of Alzheimer's or in dementia, have Alzheimer's, dementia, some form of it, that they may not remember the event the way that you do, which is why they like the stories. They love listening to the stories. And it could be that, maybe it was an ex that was getting married. That one would have a completely different perspective to everything else. I know there are some exes out there that do go to their exes' weddings and things like that and have a great time because they've ended up really good friends. But their recall is going to be a little different to somebody who is full on in there for the wedding to celebrate and everything else. So just think about those things. So your practical takeaway is document multiple perspectives without forcing agreement. So go to them and say, like my parents, a great example, when the Queen passed away and the King's coronation was coming up, I knew that that King George VI had died. My mum was about 9 or 10 when it happened. I asked her what her memories were of it and the Queen's coronation the following year. And she says, to be honest, I really don't have a lot of memories about that. She says, I kind of recall that on the radio we heard he had passed away and that she had become queen. And I said, what about the coronation? She said, well, you have to remember, we didn't have a TV back then. She said, we just sat around the radio and listened. She doesn't have much of a recollection of it back then. She was 8 or 9 at the time. Again, age coming into the factor. There's some things that I remember about my childhood. My mum turns around and looks at me and goes, what are you talking about? So I'll tell her about the event and everything else. She goes, I don't think that happened. We had interesting conversation. In fact, it was interesting when we were driving up to see my brother. After I'd arrived a couple of weeks later, we drove up north to go and see my brother and his family. And as we're going past different places, Mum was like, oh, do you remember this? Do you remember that? And da-da-da-da. And memories were coming back. And again, we had different recollections of those memories because Mum was an adult at that time. I was a child or a teenager. So we had different perspectives of those same events and things like that. And we talked about, and suddenly we'd drive through one area and I'll go, oh, where was it that da-da-da-da happened? And my mum and dad would look at each other and go, not sure what you're talking about. But again, once I provided more information and told the story of the whole thing that happened, they said, oh, yes, now I recall, that was at blah, 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 blah. So different stories are going to come out different ways because people have different perspectives. People process things differently in their brain. So even though you see the exact same thing, you're going to have a different emotional connection to it. Your brain is going to process it differently than other people. You're going to have different emotions. You're going to have different, just a different feel about the event and everything else. So your task for today is to document multiple perspectives without forcing agreement. Just ask them about, was there a recent wedding or a recent funeral? What were their thoughts about it? And if you want help documenting family perspectives, send us a private message and we're happy to help with that. Remember that different memories do not cancel each other. They complete the story. The more it's, DNA is the perfect example of this. The more DNA sample, the more people, so say like if you have siblings, the more siblings that do a DNA sample, the bigger, and more rounded and fulfilled the picture is going to be for who your ancestor, for connections to your ancestors and things. Because you might have 3 or 4 siblings, and when the DNA is done, it's going to come back with different results. But with siblings, yes, you each get 50% of your DNA from your father, 50% from your mother, but not exactly the same unless you're an identical twin. Identical twins are different. Identical births are different. But if you but you get some DNA from your dad, some from your mum, and it's not, some of it's the same, some of it isn't. So there are going to be differences. This is why when you're doing a DNA test and that you might be related to you might show a blood relation to some of your cousins, but your sibling may not, because you don't get the same DNA from both parents unless you're an identical twin, identical triplets, whatever. So think about that. So go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we will catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hei konera.